Hello, Saints. Welcome in for another midweek video. We've been talking a lot lately from different angles and with different topics. But anyway, it comes out the same, and that is about worship and more specifically personal worship. And I just wanted to spend a few moments today talking about that. In Amos chapter 5, God has some blunt words to say to the people of God, particularly the nation of Israel. And he says these words. He said, I hate and I reject your festivals. I don't delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them. I'll not even look at the peace offerings of your fatlings. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I'll not even listen to the sound of your harps. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. He asked a question. He said, did you present me with sacrifices and grain offerings in the wilderness for 40 years? You also carried along Sikkuth, your king, and Kiyyun, your images. Of course, these are false gods. The star of your gods, which you made for yourselves. Therefore, I will make you go into exile beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. The issue that God was addressing there is this one. The greatest worship that we can offer God is to offer him ourselves. More worship takes place Monday through Saturday than it does on Sunday. And the reason for that is that we are going to worship something or someone. We bow at the altar of something or someone. What we give ourselves to or who we give ourselves to is the issue. A.W. Tozer said it this way. He said, if you do not worship God 7 days a week, you do not worship him 1 day a week. There's no such thing in heaven as Sunday worship unless it is accompanied by Monday worship and Tuesday worship and so on. Excuse me. Of course, as I've addressed numerous times recently, we see worship is beyond, but including gathering together and singing songs and praising God. That is certainly worship. Our problem is most of the Western church, we have limited worship to that event. So what we're saying and what God was saying is that we need to live our lives in a constant offering of worship, every minute of every day. True worship, and this is what God was addressing with the children of Israel, true worship must include all of our life, not just Sunday morning, not just religious activities. The problem with Israel is they had separated their worship from their daily life. And you can't do that. Your daily life is your worship. Their outward form that seems on the surface, we would think, well, that's pretty good, of singing and sacrifices and prayers. God had no use for that because the inner meaning had been lost to them. They were just going through the motion. They were just going through religious exercises. And God's calling all of us to make sure that our worship goes beyond the church walls, goes beyond a religious meeting, but that our life is a life of worship. True worship, if we're truly worshiping God, it will influence all that we do. All of our behavior, all of our attitudes. It'll influence our faithfulness. It'll influence the confession of our faith. So what God desires more than the worship of sacrifices, songs, and ceremonies performed in the church building is the worship of our lives, our holy lives, expressed in justice and kindness and humility toward others. our sacrifice of praise with the gathered body of God's people. Now that's right. We should do that. We should gather with the body. We should offer our sacrifice of praise. But it's only acceptable to God if it comes out of the holy sacrifice of our lives. If we haven't offered our lives as a living sacrifice, of course, Romans 12, then our sacrifices we try to offer on Sunday morning, God he doesn't like that. Of course, you see what he said to the children of Israel. He was sending them into exile. What God desires, what he really desires, is you. I mean, he doesn't want just what you have to offer or what you can bring him or what you can do for him. All that's important, and it's part of the package. But really, it begins with the fact that he wants you. There's no worship of any kind, Old Testament, New Testament, it doesn't matter. No worship of any kind without sacrifice. Ian Malins wrote a book called Come Let Us Worship Together, and he addresses Paul's Romans 12. He says, so says Paul, take your body. Take all the tasks that you do each day. Take the ordinary work of the home, the office, the workshop, the garden, the classroom, the laundry, the farm, and offer all that as an act of worship to God. This is your spiritual worship. This is the true worship that you offer. And so we offer all that we have, and we sacrifice ourselves. We give ourselves. And that doesn't mean putting ourselves down or punishing ourselves, but it means the entirety of who we are, the entirety of what we do. That is our sacrifice. Oswald Chambers, in his great devotional on June the 13th, wrote this: there's actually only one thing you can dedicate to God, and that is your right to yourself. You can dedicate your right to yourself to God. And when you do that, that is the greatest act of worship. That's greater than singing any song. And I like singing songs. But until you offer yourself and dedicate yourself to God and give him the right to yourself, then all the singing of songs is just a bunch of noise. I wrote this down some time ago. Real worship is not something confined to a church. It is something which sees my body as the temple of the living God. We see that in Corinthians. So that everything done with and in my body is to be done as an act of worship unto him. Now, I'm beating that dead horse, except the problem is that horse is not dead. That horse is living if we will hear, if we will see the entirety of our lives as worship. So how are we going to present ourselves? Well, first of all, you have to present all that you are. Not all that you want to be and not all that you were, but present all that you are. Present all that we own, everything we own. All that we have, remember, everything we have came from him. And so we present everything, we give everything to him. We present all that we do to him, every moment of every day. This means there's no real difference between Christian work, quote unquote, and secular work, quote unquote. Work is work. All our work it should be done, and it is our full-time service for Christ. And then, obviously, we present physical acts of worship, things that we do every day, works. But again, if that doesn't begin with our giving ourselves, then it's a moot point. To serve Christ is to worship Christ, and to serve God's people is to serve Christ. I will finish up with an excerpt from the Kernels of Truth, 2003. It says, worship should be a lifestyle that reflects our awareness of God's influence in our lives. If we are to give God the true worship he deserves, we must determine to conduct ourselves in a manner that is becoming to our calling as the people of God. If we adopt a focus of worship in our lifestyle, it will help to reflect the involvement of God in our everyday affairs. I hope this means something to you, and I hope it changes how you see your life as a sacrifice of worship. You have a good day, have a good week, and go out there and act like somebody. Good day.